Hello, welcome to Observer Now. I'm Brian McMillan, the publisher, and I have with me Paul Renner. Hey, Paul.
Hey, Brian.
How's it going?
Great. How are you?
So Paul Renner is, I'll read a little mini bio, very short one. You got a lot of bio to go, but here's what I got. Paul Renner is a veteran attorney, a Palm Coast resident, served in the Florida House of Representatives from 2015 to 2024, including 2022 to 4 as the Speaker of the House. And so that means during that time, he was one of the 3 most powerful political leaders in the free state of Florida. He will be on the ballot August 18 in the Republican primary for governor. So my first question is, what is at the heart of your motivation to be governor?
Well, I love the state. I've spent my whole life here. My grandfather moved here back in, I don't know, the 30s or 40s, almost 100 years ago. Started a dairy down in Pinellas County. My dad was born here. And of course, I moved here after my dad was in school in Atlanta at age 6 months of age, and have lived here ever, since, except for college and the Navy. And so I love this state. I don't want to go backwards. And we become a victim of our success here in Florida. We've done so well that people want to be here. And as a result of that, you see skyrocketing home prices, insurance, taxes, electric bills, and people feel, at least I do, and I sense that people feel that we're losing control of our destiny in Florida. And you want someone at the helm who's helped build the free state of Florida, but is going to preserve and protect it and not let it become something that gets destroyed by, just runaway growth by people from out of state really coming in and changing it. And we need to really address, I think at this point, the people who make their living in their home here are truly Florida residents, and make sure we're taking care of them, I think, is the challenge of the moment.
Very good. That basically leads to my next question. If elected governor, what would you do to make Florida more affordable?
Well, in special session, and I mean like right after I get inaugurated next January, I want a special session specifically on affordability to cover 4 things. One is to address property taxes, depending on what happens on the ballot. I'm the only one with a specific plan to eliminate homestead property taxes, help small businesses, renters. It's a comprehensive plan, goes beyond just homestead property. With a combination of savings that we can do at all levels of government with permanent DOGE across the state, the local government, universities, special districts, to save a good chunk of that so we don't have to have replacement taxes. But the ones we do, we want to shift the burden over to tourists, people who vacation here, who speculate here, people, for example, that have bought up over 100,000 single-family homes, these out-of-state and out-of-country private equity companies, and turn those homes into rentals. We'll pay a little bit more under my plan, and we'll shift that burden away from those who make Florida home. That's number 1 on taxes. And then we have a plan to reduce insurance rates by 10 to 20% through a series of reforms, as well as electric rates by reforming how utilities charge. So they are prioritizing lower cost options, not getting paid a guaranteed profit based on how much they spend, which of course incentivizes them to spend more and not simply do well when we do well. And then separately on affordability is stopping the construction of these 1.0 versions of the AI hyperscale data centers. Imagine if you bragged to your friends about your music collection and you pointed to your wall and said, look at my 8-track tape collection. And that's really what's on offer with these data centers. Over time, they will get smaller, cooler, more manageable. But right now, this is a terrible deal for Florida. It will raise electric rates. It will damage our environment, our aquifer. It has a lot of things that concern me greatly. We need to take a pause on it statewide, as other counties have done, and then wait for those companies to offer us a better deal with technology that develops. Because what's going to happen is they're actually going to abandon these large scale data centers that are going to be the dinosaurs, the 8-track tapes, if you will, of data centers in the future. And we don't want to just bite on the first thing that comes along. And so we want to put a stop on it, let them meet the burden to prove that this is good for Florida. And if and only if they can meet that burden, will we allow them in our state.
Yeah, it's interesting. It does sound, I didn't really think of it that way, but there'll be the advancement in the next 5 years will probably be phenomenal. So
maybe the next 2.
Yeah, it could be. The next question, I have a couple questions about some of the platforms on your website, the issues that you have. And so here's the question. How do you balance having compassion for your neighbors while also having zero tolerance for illegal immigration?
Well, I think illegal immigration is driving up home prices. It's putting a burden on taxpayers in terms of education, healthcare, all the things that taxpayers have to foot the bill for, and people can't afford their own bills. So I'm compassionate for people who, again, are Florida residents, U.S. citizens, and that's where compassion belongs. And certainly, people that go through the process and become immigrants. I'm married to one. That's a different story, but people that are coming across the border, people that are not here, should not be here, need to leave. And so, we'll enforce immigration laws and be good partners with the federal government in that regard.
While Speaker of the House, you promoted safeguards for children from social media exploitation. That was something you're very passionate about. Is that mission accomplished, or does more need to be done?
More needs to be done. You now have AI on top of that. And it's not that I'm against AI as a technology, but the threat to kids is real. It takes it up an order of magnitude. So we have children on these addictive social media platforms that are having major psychological issues, depression, suicide, really wrecking them because it's using addiction to keep them on for hours at a time. And it's been documented everywhere. Countries across the globe are banning young children from getting on these addictive platforms, which is positive. Let adults be on there, certainly, or a kid over 16 perhaps is kind of where they draw the line. A lot of people do. And so AI will only make that worse for children. And the difference is, if your child is depressed from being on social media, a loved one will stop whatever they're doing to make sure they get help and that they don't take their life. For example, AI will give them 5 ways to take their life. And it just doesn't have a capital T truth. It doesn't have a moral compass. And so humanity has to be in control of technology, not the other way around. And so AI can have benefits in healthcare diagnosis and making things more efficient in a variety of different ways, speeding up the research process. But it can also have a lot of harm, and we cannot allow, for example, a surveillance state to grow as a result of the use of AI. We have to really put sufficient guardrails, harness the benefits, but put guardrails around the potential risks. And that's true in any technology. It always comes with benefits and risks. We have to mitigate the risk and harness those benefits.
Yeah, it's interesting because you go back in time, and every time there's a new technology, it's sort of like, are we losing our humanity in various ways? And we kind of we learn to deal with it, but there are trade-offs in all times. So it's interesting issue. Okay, next question. Your campaign website says you support instruction in American exceptionalism in schools. So what does that mean to you? And are there aspects of our history that we should avoid teaching?
Well, we should never avoid teaching any aspects of our history. It should always be frank and honest about the good, the bad, and the ugly. But there's a lot more good, in my opinion, than bad or ugly. And that exceptionalism, goes to transmitting to the next generation the love for freedom. Reagan said it, that we cannot guarantee freedom beyond a single generation. It's not part of our DNA. It's not part of our bloodstream. It has to be inculcated. It has to be taught. It has to be transmitted and really given to the next generation to love this country. For any of its faults, freedom has always served society across the globe better, and it leads to human thriving. And America is the shining example of that. And so embracing that, being proud of our history, being proud of what we've stood for and how it's worked so well is something that needs to be there, because for too long and too often you have the indoctrination, I would call it, of the other philosophy that views America as a place that ought to be torn to the ground. And so we need to study Marx, but we also need to study Adam Smith. We need to study, what happened in the Soviet Union or Cuba. We need to study also why America has done so much better than those countries, and that's American exceptionalism.
Very good. According to Pew Research Center, more and more people see the opposing party not just as a platform they disagree with, but also being immoral. And I feel like we tend to now more than ever villainize people that disagree with us. So what I'm wondering is, what do you think we can do to be able to disagree but still be agreeable?
Well, as a military veteran, I fought for everybody. I wore one uniform, and the guy next to me might have been a liberal Democrat. I didn't know. I didn't care. We were there for a mission and a purpose, which was the purpose of our country to protect our citizens from harm. And in the case of Desert Storm, against Saddam Hussein and what was happening there, and in Afghanistan, to go after the people that bombed the towers, at 9/11, and make sure we're protecting against the threat of Islam here in the homeland. And so that meant that you're protecting everyone's First Amendment, free speech, their right to assemble, their right to petition for redress of grievances, right of press and assembly, and everything, the right for free expression of your religion and your faith, no establishment of religion. All those things that are in the First Amendment are for everyone, as well as the Second Amendment and the Third and the Fourth, and on it goes. Has no party, has no race, has no gender, has no nothing other than it's for every American citizen. So that's how I'll govern as governor. And what I will say is the challenge we have is a philosophy that does not believe in not only not a capital T truth, but any truth that can't define what a woman is. I think is where we're at a crossroads, because as a person of faith, that's where I get my capital T truth. That's where I get my North Star in terms of what leads to happiness, what leads to success, human thriving. And I think the keys to our 250 years has been faith, it's been family, it's been patriotism. And if you lose things like that you can rally around, then it's hard for the nation to stay united. But I do believe we must have a united nation. We cannot be divided. As Lincoln said, house divided cannot stand. And so I would make every effort to try to bridge that divide without compromising my belief in what I believe are timeless truths that make Florida and America exceptional. And I won't back down from those truths to build a bridge, but we'll certainly not look to demonize other Floridians as the enemy, as much as I will engage on the battle of ideas as to why ideas work or don't work, and be very candid about that.
Yeah, kind of a follow-up to that is, I guess, as governor and in the legislature, it seems like there is an ability sometimes to say, well, that's something that I don't agree with. And so as a legislative body, we're now going to not only say we disagree, but we're going to outlaw that, if that makes sense. Can other viewpoints coexist and still be legal? Does that make sense as a question?
Well,
that wasn't one of the questions.
Well, ideas and speech have to coexist because the First Amendment dictates that they coexist. And so, and look, I've seen legislation that goes through, and the party, and people on the other side of the aisle will say, well, we feel like this is going to do X, Y, and Z. Well, we don't mean X, Y, and Z. We mean A, B, and C. And so they, because of that free speech right, and because of that, mixing in the legislature and having, both sides kind of at the table debating these issues out, the legislation gets better. It addresses some of the complaints by the Democrats in that case, or if the roles were reversed, Republicans, raising objections, the Democrats would say, okay, that's probably true. And so we get better legislation, better laws as a result of that clashing of ideas. And it can be civil, but it can be vigorous. And so we had those vigorous debates, but we always allowed for debate. We always allowed for questions. We never silenced the opposition. Even with a supermajority, I did not use the tools we had, the rules, to kind of waive questions, waive debate. You can waive a lot of those rules and just jam things through. I never did that, because I believe that you get a better product, you get a better outcome. It also means that we, as the majority party, had to argue why we're doing what we're doing and make the case. And it made us better to deliver that case to voters.
Mm-hmm. How does this relate to the concept of home rule? How do you balance saying that we're going to take the state in this direction, but we're going to respect that, the local leaders also need to run things the best way that matches what their community desires?
Well, as I've spent time on the campaign trail, I've really come to a firm conclusion that people want more local control, and they deserve it. We don't want the federal government stripping away from us all of our ability to act at the state level, and so we shouldn't do it to the local. So I do believe that pendulum needs to come back into balance. That is partly the answer to how we control our own destiny when it comes to matters of growth and where things, get built, and making sure that local governments that know better about their communities than the state will ever know have control over the destiny of their communities by listening to their voters.
Very good. The last question is, and this is honestly, when I heard that you were going to run, I've interviewed you many times, seen you rise to that level at the Speaker of the House. I kind of assumed that you would be the front runner in this race, and right now, you're not necessarily the front runner in the race. So for those people who see you as sort of an underdog, what is the main reason that you think people should shift their support to you, as opposed to others that may be leading you in the polls?
Well, first of all, there's certainly been an effort to try to, I don't want to say rig the election, but to make sure that no money flows to any other candidate that can get their message out, but only to one candidate who refuses to even get on the stage and debate. So it's really an affront to the voters. I think they realize that they're looking for something else. And when we get our message in front of voters, we convert those votes, and we beat Byron Donalds is what you were referring to. Undecided, still the front runner, always has been, but we believe we'll convert a lot of those undecideds in the upcoming weeks before the election. And the reasons are fourfold. One is you want a proven leader who's been battle tested. I've been 20 years in the military, a Navy commander. I served in 2 wars, leading under pressure as a state prosecutor, trying violent felons. As a business owner, a partner in a business, I've had private sector experience, and also leading the Florida House, about 500 employees. So I've had these executive roles that is important for an executive office like governor that the other candidates come nowhere close. The same is true for results. The governor said those 2 years were unprecedented among all the states in the country. We got more done in those 2 years when I was leading than any other 2 years in Florida history, frankly. And so, I just say when I was in charge, conservatives won every battle, but we also did some bipartisan things that were big wins, like social media, like the Florida Wildlife Corridor, protecting our environment. And then third is vision. We have a contract with Florida on our website, voterenner.com, that if you look at what others have said, and there's people that have put out this or that, but collectively, all of the candidates have not put out as comprehensive a plan as we have for the first 100 days that you can look up at voterenner.com. My commitment, my written commitment to get after affordability, safety, the freedom of our health freedom, our environment, and also just keeping Florida free. And then the final thing is I've led from the front with the governor when others have, waited for the battle to come to them. And that, I mean, school board races. I and the governor were fighting. None of these other candidates got involved in that to make sure we had common sense people in office across the state. And Amendments 3 and 4, I fought vigorously, traveled the state, spent over $2 million in 24 alone out of the stuff we raised money for that I can't use in the governor's race to stop those, because that's what you should expect from a leader. The other guy sent out a post on social media, but that doesn't get it done. And so those are 4 reasons: experience, under pressure, the results I've delivered in office, standing up to special interests like big tech, like the insurance and billboard lawyers, the big vision we have for the future, and being a leader that goes to the fight and doesn't wait for the fight to come to me, are why we convert people when they have a comparison between me and the other candidates. We rapidly convert voters. And so what we're doing in these next weeks are getting to those voters who've not heard about me or don't know enough about me and don't know enough about the other candidates. When they do a fair comparison, we win. And so that's the process we're undertaking, and obviously raising money to get that message out as well.
Very good. I also I like the hyper local candidate. Got the Palm Coast resident. We bumped into each other at a park. You playing with your family. Like, how's your family holding up on this whirlwind campaign?
Well, they're doing great, and I think it's important. If I know Flagler County better than anybody, obviously, in this race, and as governor, we'll always carry that knowledge and what's important to our citizens, as well as the other areas I represented, St. John's and Volusia. But I know it well, and so that's a big advantage in terms of a voter's decision. The other advantage I didn't mention, a fifth one, I guess, a sixth one, if you will, is is experience at the state. Byron Donalds was in Congress for the last 5 years, not his fault, but I have much more experience at the state level. I know the incoming presiding officers and can work with all of them at a very high level and be effective on day one. There's no on-the-job training because I was really the number two Speaker of the House. You're doing the budget, controlling the legislative agenda, running those employees and really in terms of influence right behind the governor. And so I'm ready to go and know the people that are incoming and can work with him very effectively, which is why I think on election night, we're going to be victorious.
All right. Well, best of luck with the campaign, and thanks for being transparent and available to share who you are with our readers.
Great to be with your listeners, Brian. Thanks for the opportunity.